Hello, everybody. Dave Neal here, stand-up comic and host of Bachelor Nation News. This is a quick recap of what went down last night on the Women Tell All regarding Anastasia, accused of having a boyfriend during taping of The Bachelor by Kat and Victoria and others. And we're going to get into this. We haven't heard much of a response from her after the show last night. She actually hasn't posted anything on social media regarding the show in a while. But it's a very fascinating story because these accusations were made, and then people just kind of moved on with the episode. And it's like, look, if you're going to accuse someone of something and you have receipts, share those receipts if that's what you want to do. Don't go like halfway about it. We're going to get into this right now. Follow me on Instagram at DNeals. Was just live on Patreon. I'll be live again tomorrow. Patreon.com/Dave Neal for behind the scenes bonus content. And this afternoon we'll have episode 100 of Bachelor Rush Hour, the podcast. Can you believe we've already hit 100 episodes? We have a new sponsor this week, and you're going to like to hear what we have to say regarding the show. We'll go further in depth during the podcast. All right, here she is. I never dated that person. So that was her response. Rather than me cover it, let's hear what Charlene has to say about Anastasia versus everyone.
Okay, so Anastasia now. Victoria J comes after her saying Anastasia came on as a business opportunity.
That's Victoria J.
She said that she told her to her face. And Kat jumps in saying that she had a boyfriend the whole time and she has receipts. But we never get to see the receipts.
I didn't see receipts.
I like to see receipts when people say they have.
Okay, I didn't watch this already because I wanted to get my reaction. Charlene says, I like to see receipts when people have receipts. Yeah, there's no point in saying you have receipts if you're not going to show the receipts. Release the receipts.
It's too easy to be like, I have receipts. And if no one's ever going to be like, okay, let's see the receipts.
Yeah, let's see the receipts. You can say I have receipts for anything.
Yeah, let's look at the receipts and then we can judge whether or not Anastasia had a boyfriend or whatever the receipts were for. Was it for having a boyfriend, or was the receipt that she was going on the show for a business opportunity? I hate when people accuse others of going on the show for the wrong reasons when they themselves are the ones going onto it for business opportunity. I like Victoria Jameson. I enjoy her social media. Her calling out Anastasia makes no sense because everyone's there for business opportunities, and that's okay too. We have Victoria was wearing a amazing outfit and everyone's giving her some love for the dress she was wearing. Absolutely. And then she can go there and promote the dress. This is business. This is the business of being on the show. If anything, I guess you're going to say, well, Anastasia was dumb enough to talk about going there for business. Sure, but then we're still not addressing the issue is that go on the show for your quote-unquote business opportunity. If you fall in love, great. But again, don't go on the show if you have a boyfriend back home. But it sounds like Kat accused Anastasia of having a boyfriend because Anastasia might have hooked up with a guy the week prior at a wedding, and maybe the guy was watching her dog. You're allowed to have sex with somebody after a wedding if you're single and you're not on the show. It's kind of like the Cassidy Timbrooks where she's like, I had a friend with benefits. Yeah, literally up until the moment you leave for the show, go hook up with somebody. You're still single.
Yeah, I have receipts that I shot JFK. Okay.
Demonetized.
Genevieve says that that's impossible because she was Anastasia's roommate and she hadn't heard of this. I'm only laughing.
By the way, I love that Charlene's wearing Power Rangers colors. She's got all the colors on this plaid shirt. But anyway.
I think because being someone's roommate does not mean that you're going to hear whether or not they have a boyfriend, because if she's smart, she will never mention it.
Yeah, it doesn't mean anything.
Andy, you at this point called so far the Women Tell All a big nothing burger.
Yeah.
Anastasia vehemently denies having a boyfriend and saying she was there for followers. Kylie joins in now about how Anastasia called her aggressive, and now Genevieve. I do like this about Genevieve. She just sort of stands up for what she believes in. She's not like, oh, this is my friend, I'm going to defend them regardless.
Yeah.
And so now she also jumps in against Anastasia, even though she just defended her, saying that it was a racially driven microaggression. And Anastasia says she apologized to Kylie already and they've sorted things. And Kylie's like, not really. She says Anastasia never seemed to really care about whether or not she had hurt Kylie. She just came to speak to her seemingly to protect herself, basically. It was self-preservation. But she hopes she learns and grows from this and now accepts her apology. Okay, so let's quickly touch on this.
Here's what Genevieve actually said. She says, black women in general deal with the stereotype of being aggressive and microaggressions and extremely subtle that communicate bias to historically marginalized groups of people. Did I get that right? Says Anastasia propelled that stereotype.
People really don't like Anastasia.
Yeah, but I feel like there's a mob mentality in these women and or men tell-alls. But where there's smoke, there is fire. And I do think that Anastasia has probably committed some fouls here.
That's the thing. If she really were so beloved by all, this wouldn't happen.
Right.
She must have rubbed enough people the wrong way. So even though I actually think in the moment, and the same with on the show, actually, Anastasia, when confronted, she really doesn't retaliate.
No.
In this situation, she was just like, I'm sorry.
No, she never
Like,
does. She's either very conflict averse or just amazing at dealing with conflict.
Maybe she's the kind of person who later on is like, oh, I wish I'd said this. But in the moment, she's a little overwhelmed.
Maybe. I don't know. She just seems really chill about taking insults.
Yeah. And also, it doesn't really kind of match the picture that they've painted of Anastasia.
Yeah.
Because according to them, she's kind of two-faced and a liar. And I don't know, just sort of self-interested. But in the moment, she's just like, okay, sorry.
Or she's such a good two-faced liar that she's well practiced in seeming like she's not a two-faced liar.
And in covering these two different topics, which are both interesting of themselves, we don't get any answers to the question, did Anastasia have a boyfriend during The Bachelor? Maybe a guy that she hooked up with at a wedding watched her dog. That's as far as we know. And I challenge Kat to share whatever receipts she says she has, or anybody else. Have that conversation, but like, don't accuse someone of something and not go the distance, because we'd rather see the proof and see if there's any subtlety to what was actually said and going down. Anyway, and then some of the reactions from the no one who was at the taping understood the receipts regarding having the boyfriend. Let's go here. Excuse me. Jeez. Oh my gosh. Pop-ups. Brooklyn didn't know. She said, when the accusation of Anastasia having a boyfriend came out, I was like, that's news to me. Some of the other accusations throughout the season, I was like, okay, I believe it. I saw it. But then that one, I was like, oh, surprise. So people were, she has gone through and done so many things in her career that has allowed her to progress as an e-commerce manager and being deep into marketing, things that I can't even imagine how she gets done, Ali told ET in Anastasia's defense. And so to see that almost be weaponized and used against her, it's hurtful and it's sad. It's okay to have a career and have love, and her career just happens to be in social media. And it's a taboo thing when it comes to finding love on reality TV. Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Anastasia's career is working in social media. Clearly, she's going to talk about it, and she's going to talk about whatever opportunities come from being on the show. To me, that doesn't mean you're there for the wrong reasons. Okay, in the other aspect of the conversation with Anastasia, the Bachelor fans call out Anastasia microaggression as she twists Kylie Russell's words. So this originally is from last month, where again, we have already talked about this, but Anastasia got in the argument and said, oh, you're trying to fight me, when in fact Kylie had just said, I don't want to fight, in a sense that was probably meant as in like a verbal altercation. Anastasia says, oh, she's trying to fight me in some sort of way that's like, oh, because she's a person of color, she might she gets aggressive when she talks up, like that microaggression of saying that people get angry when in fact they're just having a normal conversation. That is a microaggression. And, I found this interesting thing here about unmasking racial microaggressions. And again, Anastasia just apologizes. And then Kylie says, I hope you're educated on the situation, and accept her apology. And let's go to the term racial microaggressions, just so we know exactly what we're talking about. The term racial microaggressions was first proposed by psychiatrist Chester M. Pierce in the 1970s, but psychologists have significantly amplified the concept in recent years. In his landmark work on stereotype threat, for instance, Stanford University psychology professor Claude Steele has shown that African Americans and women perform worse on academic tests when primed with stereotypes about race and gender. So the whole point being is that when we feed these racial stereotypes or sexist stereotypes or whatever the stereotypes may be, people will end up what's the term to use here? Gosh, you can see I'm trying to catch my words. The study shows that people will reflect stereotypes to a degree because they're told to believe that. Women who are primed with stereotypes about women's poor math performance do worse on math tests. So it's a very interesting study about the way people act when confronted with stereotypes versus like, was that a seed that was planted in their head and whatnot? And when we talk about the microaggressions, they're just like little things that people say, little things, little generalizations that people have that can lead to a greater problem, because it's like, why couldn't Anastasia just talk to Kylie in a normal way and not take it to the place where, oh, she's trying to fight me? She's not trying to fight you. And it is things that are very tough to discuss because they're not giant issues. They're not giant racist issues. They're like the term says, micro. And by airing those out and by addressing them and by saying, look, there are microaggressions that when you talk to a black woman, you say that she's acting angry when she's really not. Why does that microaggression exist? And if more people know about it, they'll maybe actually listen to someone's conversation and not just assume they're a quote unquote angry black woman or whatever the microaggression in that context is. It's interesting to talk about because, Anastasia, she just goes right at it and apologizes, but Kylie accepts the apology, but at first says, I don't think you actually cared about my feelings. It's interesting, and it wasn't a part of the night that I wanted to not address, but as far as the Anastasia hate goes, I agree with Dear Shandy here, Charlene and Andy, in that we don't exactly know what they all have against her, but she doesn't have too many people coming to her back.
Actually, just as likely, I guess, because a good way to prove them all wrong is to seem like the victim.
Yeah, like, oh, well, me?
Yeah.
I have nothing.
But seem like the victim without playing victim, which is not what she's doing.
It's hard.
It is.
She's walking the razor's edge.
Okay, so now it's Kat Thurin's time.
Okay, so that's the last we got from that, but go check out Charlene's YouTube channel or her podcast, Dear Shandy, for excellent recap analysis. Yeah, so as far as it stands right now, we'll have to see if any other information comes out, but from all I know, the accusations of Anastasia having a boyfriend have not been seen to fruition. And because of that, I just challenge Kat and anyone else who's talking smack, provide the receipts or don't. You know what I mean? But if you're going to air that out there, have a little bit more of a defense, because these are pretty hefty accusations. Let me know what you guys think. Leave a comment. And again, we'll be back later on with the podcast Bachelor Rush Hour, or 100th episode for original summation of the day's news in the Bachelor world. Go to Bachelor Rush Hour and check out that podcast. All right, I'll be back with more content right after this.